Start in 30 seconds. Let me just.
Is there?
Good morning. Good. How are you?
Thank you. Hola.
Hola. Buenos días. Muy bien.
Aquí la con el botón libre.
No, we have to sit. So, wherever you want, the opening remarks will be here. But if you want to place your country plate, yes, anywhere around the table. I think this is it starts from there.
Ah, okay, sí.
Yeah, I think so. Especially it's more
Secretaria de Química, we have all speakers here for the opening remarks. Yes, we do. I think it's now 36 past 9 Geneva time. We are launching this event. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, good morning and welcome to the traditional Geneva celebration of World Wildlife Day, organized by the Secretariat of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species or Wildlife, Fauna and Flora, known as CITES, another ways of pronouncing it, and the Geneva Environment Network. This year, the celebration will be focusing on medicinal and aromatic plants. It is my pleasure as coordinator of the Geneva Environment Network to open today's session and to thank you all for joining us as we begin our program. We start with the welcome and opening remarks, and it is my honor to introduce our speakers. First, I'm inviting Mr. Arnold Haluber, Director of the Europe Office of the United Nations Environment Program, to formally welcome you to the International Environment House and deliver its opening remarks. Mr. Haluber.
Thank you very much, Diana, and a very warm welcome to all of you. His Excellency Ambassador Castillero Correa, Permanent Representative of Panama to the UN and other international organizations here in Geneva. His Excellency Ambassador Turney, Deputy Permanent Representative of Switzerland to the UN and other international organizations here in Geneva. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends. A very warm welcome to all of you again to the International Environment House. World Wildlife Day is both a moment to celebrate wildlife and to remind ourselves why protecting nature matters to us all. This year we're focusing, as Diana has already mentioned, on an important theme, medicinal and aromatic plants. We will hear from leading experts how these plants support health, livelihoods, and economies, as well as, of course, biodiversity. UNEP proudly hosts the Geneva Environment Network, generously supported by our host government, Switzerland, which is the organizer of today's event. And so we will also have an opportunity today to celebrate the role that is played by international Geneva and global efforts to conserve and sustainably use medicinal and aromatic plants. And I have quite often the occasion to, by virtue of my role as UNEP's representative here, to highlight the unique role that this network, all the different agencies, entities, non-governmental organizations, scientific institutions, and of course also civil society plays here in Geneva in the different policy platforms, how international Geneva comes together around the environment. And it is this rich network that collectively works to address the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. Three interconnected challenges that increasingly threaten ecosystems, which of course also the medicinal and aromatic plants depend. So on this World Wildlife Day, we must all continue to raise awareness, to strengthen knowledge, and to support action that can protect these plants for future generations. Because like so much in our natural world, these critical species are currently under threat. The celebration of World World Wildlife Day is therefore also a reminder of the importance of medicinal and aromatic plants as nature's pharmacy and the foundation for many medicines and treatments that are vital for millions of people. In protecting and conserving them, we protect ourselves and our shared future. The leading experts who have joined us today will invite us to go deeper and learn more about these plants and that their importance extends far beyond health. Ensuring their conservation is far more than an environmental imperative. It is also a social and an economic one, and one that has to be realized hand in hand with indigenous peoples and local communities. Today's event is, of course, also organized with the CITES Secretariat, and you're all invited to join the other World Wildlife Day celebration that will happen throughout the day and that are organized under the patronage of the CITES Secretariat. We hope that you will enjoy and play an active part in the program this morning. Across the exhibition that was made possible thanks to our wonderful partners that have joined us here today to showcase their work, and the fantastic expert lightning talks that are lined up for us all. All of this will, I have no doubt, be more evidence that we have the expertise, that we have the partnerships to drive the necessary change going forward. And that UNEP will be committed to working with all of you to make this happen. Thank you very much and happy World Wildlife Day.
Thank you, Mr. Fauna. It's now my honor to welcome His Excellency Ambassador of the Secretariat of Flora, permanent representative of the Republic of Panama to the United of other international organizations in Geneva, also to be open that Panama and to host the next conference of parties to the Scientist Convention. Excellency.
Thank you. Good morning. Distinguished Secretary, Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. On the occasion of the World Wildlife Day 2026, we reflect on the importance of medicinal and aromatic plants for conserving health, heritage, and livelihoods. These species support primary health care for millions of people, obtain ecosystem, and contribute to resilient local economies. Their conservation is therefore inseparable from sustainable development and from the protection of traditional knowledge held by indigenous people and local communities. As a mega diverse country and committed global partner, Panama highlights the profound connection between biodiversity, cultural heritage, and human well-being. Our ecosystem hosts a rich diversity of medicinal plants that are essential to community health systems and to the preservation of ancestral knowledge. Safeguarding this resource means safeguarding both nature and identity. Panama is honored to host the next conference of the parties to the CITES COP21, and we remain firmly committed to advancing ambitious and science-based conservation outcomes. At the most recent conference of the parties held in Uzbekistan, Panama played a leading role in strengthening protection for marine biodiversity, contributing to the inclusion of several sharks and ray species in Appendix 1, and an important step toward ensuring their survival and the health of our oceans. Panama believes that leadership in biodiversity conservation requires cooperation, equity, and respect for traditional knowledge. The sustainable use of medicinal plants can support livelihoods, experiment climate resilience, and promote inclusive development, particularly for rural and coastal communities. We reaffirm our commitment to partnerships that conserve biodiversity while advancing health, sustainability, and shared property for present and future generations. Thank you and enjoy the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. We now turn to our host country with His Excellency Ambassador Julien Tony, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Switzerland to the United Nations Office and other international organizations in Geneva. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. It's a great honor for me to make some introductory remarks on the occasion of the World Wildlife Day 2026. Let me first thank the CITES, Secretariat, and the Geneva Environment Network for bringing us together and for organizing also this very specific and important event. It is fitting that we meet here in Geneva, a hub for global cooperation and action. Some key actors are rooted here in Geneva area. CITES, Ramsar, IUCN, to name a few. Others come to Geneva for meetings or are closely connected with nature, such as UNEP and the Basel Rotterdam Stockholm Conventions. The International Geneva indeed stands as a vital and vibrant ecosystem where governments, international organizations, and civil societies come together to address pressing global challenges. Among the many innovations taking place here, this ecosystem plays a key role in fostering solutions to environmental issues, from policy to development to scientific research. Many are aimed at safeguarding our planet's biodiversity and ensuring a sustainable future for all. Not losing sight of the added value of International Geneva is of particular importance in the current context. The financial challenges, political attacks against multilateralism, but also grave violations of international law put the system in a very challenging situation. Switzerland is aware of the need to prioritize multilateral action and of the pressure put on organizations to reduce costs. However, we must be careful not to fall into the trap of short-termism and throw overboard the assets that we have all developed for a long time here in Geneva, starting with this specific ecosystem. Now, going back to the question of our global ecosystem. Our theme for this year, Medicinal and Aromatic Plants, Conserving Health, Heritage, and Livelihoods, reminds us that our natural world is not only beautiful and diverse, but essential to our well-being and survival. For millennia, medicinal and aromatic plants have been the cornerstone of traditional healing systems, cultural practices, and spiritual beliefs across continents. Today, they continue to play a vital role, from the formulation of life-saving drugs to the creation of cosmetics and nutritional products. Switzerland recognizes this immense value. We are committed to the conservation and sustainable use of these resources, not only through strong domestic legislation, but through active participation in global agreements, such as CITES and the Convention on Biological Diversity. Switzerland is also a significant hub in the international trade and processing of medicinal and aromatic plants, including species like Aloe ferox, Prunus africana, and Sassuria costus. With this role comes responsibility. That is why we support projects that promote sustainable harvesting, traceable supply chains, and fair benefits for local communities, especially in biodiversity-rich countries. This work is not only about environmental protection, it is also about preserving cultural heritage and securing livelihoods. Traditional knowledge systems, particularly those of indigenous peoples and local communities, must be respected and protected, not exploited. Ethnobotany and ethnomedicine offer rich insights and that deserve recognition in research, policy, and trade. As science advances, the potential of these plants to contribute to future medical innovation is extraordinary. But many species are under increasing pressure from habitat loss, overharvesting, and climate changes. That is why we must invest in both in situ and ex situ conservation, including the vital role played by botanical gardens, such as the Conservatory and Botanical Garden of Geneva. We just a few days ago, on February 28, hosted a dedicated event on this topic. Let us remember, protecting medicinal and aromatic plants is not a luxury, it is a necessity for our health, our heritage, and the generation to come. I'm looking forward to fruitful discussion and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador Penny. To conclude, I'm pleased to turn to the CITES or Washington Convention Secretariat that is in charge of facilitating the implementation of World Wildlife Day. We are joined in person by Ms. Cristina Rodina de Carvalho, Chief of the Outreach and Projects Unit at the CITES Secretariat, to share her opening remarks. And the Secretary General will also be joining us later. Ms. Rodina de Carvalho, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Diana, and good morning to everyone. I hope you enjoyed breakfast. We still have a lot of food. Please take it. So it's a great pleasure to welcome all of you, Excellencies, dear guests and colleagues. First of all, what I want to say is medicinal and aromatic plants, you will hear the world maps the whole day today because this is their kind of accepted term. It's very close to my heart because this is how I started my career 15 years ago, working on medicinal and aromatic plants projects in Europe, at that time with traffic. And what I think amazed me that this topic is, apologies, it's quietly overlooked when we talk about biodiversity conservation and international policy. Because if you look in your daily lives, you do use medicinal and aromatic plants just without thinking about it. And this morning when I was getting ready for this event, basically I was thinking, okay, I have my chamomile tea in the evenings, I have my shea butter cream in my desk, I use a lot of aromatic spices when I'm cooking meals for my family. So these plants are really, really presented in our lives. And what also made me think that those people who are custodians in many ways, so they're very often overlooked because for those local communities and indigenous peoples, these plants are not only cultural identity, is also very important source of income. And very often this is the survival for many of those communities. Many products also are, when it comes to the medicinal aromatic plants, without even thinking twice, they come from wild harvested species, which faces very complex sustainability challenges. For example, just let me give a few examples. When we talk about, and I think we'll touch base on several species today during this event and during the later event that we will host online, frankincense species which comes from the Vespella trees, which is a CITES listed species. It does face a lot of risk when it comes to over harvesting it and also actually over tapping and the habitat pressures. Another one, not CITES listed species, but very common, I'm sure you all know it, which is a licorice root, which is harvested mostly from wild harvested species in Eurasia and North America. So this species, if not sustainably managed, has a lot of risk when it comes to the management practices and also over harvesting. So we don't think about this when it comes to our daily consumption of those plants. And also these plants, they may be endangered, they may be unsustainably harvested, and also the trade, it may be not well regulated. And this is the very common case. So as a CITES, what we're seeing as a first hand that essential cooperation is super important when we talk about conservation and sustainable use of this species. Just to give an example, at CITES we have more than 1,600 species of maps which are listed under CITES. And we are really helping to ensure that the trade is sustainable, is legal and traceable. I'm very happy to hear today about very different perspectives because we have fantastic speakers, very rich panel, and what is the most important, very different sectors today. And I wanted to, first of all, I think to congratulate Geneva Environment Network and thank them for a wonderful event and hosting us today. And I would like to invite you all now to move to the room number 2. We will be watching the video from CITES Secretary General, Madam Yvonne Higuero, and then we will dive into technical talks. And I'll hand over to Diana. Thank you.
Around the world, medicinal and aromatic plants are woven into the daily lives of billions of people. They flavor our foods, anchor our healing traditions, support our well-being, and sustain livelihoods in rural and indigenous communities. On this World Wildlife Day 2026, we shine a spotlight on these remarkable species and on the knowledge systems that have conserved them for generations. Medicinal and aromatic plants are part of humanity's oldest relationship with nature. Long before modern science could explain their properties, communities understood their power. They learned which roots could heal, which leaves could soothe, which resins could protect. This heritage is still alive today, carried forward by traditional healers, harvesters, growers, and families who rely on these plants for health and cultural identity. These species also play a fundamental role in today's global economy. From ginseng to agarwood, from orchids to aloes, many medicinal and aromatic plants are traded internationally, and over 1,500 are regulated under the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, or CITES. Through CITES, countries work together to ensure that this trade is sustainable, legal, and traceable, so that wild populations are not depleted and communities can continue to benefit from them. Yet the pressures are growing. Along with the triple planetary crisis, unsustainable harvesting and illegal trade threaten the very plants that have supported human health for millennia. As demand rises, so does the urgency to strengthen sustainable management, support community-led stewardship, and respect traditional knowledge. This year's theme, Medicinal and Aromatic Plants, Conserving Health, Heritage, and Livelihoods, reminds us that the benefits of nature are shared fairly and sustainably. For this World Wildlife Day, I invite you to share your ideas. How can we better conserve medicinal and aromatic plants? How can we support the communities who depend on them? And how can we ensure that these species continue to enrich our lives in our medicines, our traditions, and our economies? Conserving medicinal and aromatic plants is a commitment to our collective well-being. It is a commitment to the people who have conserved these species for generations and to the future generations who will depend on them. Happy World Wildlife Day 2026.
The event now is continuing in this room. I'm looking at my colleague to make sure that we can be audible online because we are changing system. Very good. So now we should not see the slides on WebEx, but only the camera. So while my colleague is fixing that, we are launching the second part of the day. This is what we forgot to do earlier. And in this second part, we are following the recommendations of the Secretary General. Our speakers will offer concise insights into the intersections of trade, traditional knowledge, public health, and scientific innovation related to medicinal and aromatic plants. Each presentation will highlight a different dimension of the topic we are celebrating today, and we are very grateful to have all these speakers who have joined us today, all these leading experts. And before we give the floor to our first leading expert, I wanted to highlight that our team had a lot of pleasure in preparing this event and these talks. I'm getting the mic closer to me. Ah, no, it doesn't like it, so I will take that. Sorry for that. It was working perfectly. I think it comes from that. So I would also, as we start, I would also, so I was mentioning that we had a lot of pleasure in preparing this event and see how much expertise there is indeed in International Geneva on this topic, and also academic Geneva, because we have here a few people also from the University of Geneva. We have even launched a dedicated page on our website where we highlight this expertise. And we are very excited to learn more today with our leading experts. And I would also like to acknowledge, as we start, that many of us, UN civil servants, diplomats, and colleagues working across international affairs may find it uncomfortable to celebrate at a moment when, to quote the UN Secretary General, we are witnessing a grave threat to international peace and security. So this makes us even more important to reaffirm our commitment to the UN Charter and to the principles of international law that guide our work every day. As members of the environmental community, we carry a particular responsibility to safeguard and restore the environment and our natural resources, and to protect the health of our planet for the benefit of present and future generations. This is why we are here with our experts to learn more about medicinal and aromatic plants that are threatened with extinction and how we can work better together to preserve them. And to begin, I am pleased to turn to Mr. Alexandre Casterine. Where is Alexander? He's sitting over there, who is the head of trade and environment at the International Trade Center. Is it still correct, Alexander? Yes, it is. We'll learn from Mr. Casterine if trade supports the conservation of medicinal and aromatic plants. So the floor is yours. Let me also put this on you because we are streaming on various supports, maybe here.
Okay, thanks very much. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, thanks very much to CITES and Geneva Environment Network for the opportunity to speak to you today in a lightning talk, 6 minutes or less. So, yeah, my name is Alex Casterine. I work at ITC as a Senior Advisor on Trade and Environment. I'm going to speak about the policy and the value chain aspects of the trade and the links to conservation and livelihoods. So this is a plant called Rhodelia crenulata. It's an Appendix 2 listed species. Thank you very much. And I think it's an interesting picture because it raises questions like, has that plant been ripped out of the ground? Has it been sustainably harvested? Will it grow back again? What are the properties that are linked to that bottle on the right? What's it going to be used for? What are the communities involved in its collection? What sort of land is it being harvested from? Is it communal land? Is it private land? And so forth. And so I think that's an interesting place to start. And to answer some of the questions around that, ICC worked in 2014, a long time ago, but we prepared a paper with IUCN specialist species groups to look at a framework for analyzing these issues. And at the time we had a partnership with CITES, where we were supporting CITES parties on all value chain aspects of the trade. And out of that study came 3 factors that I'd like to share with you as to what we think would be the elements determining sustainable outcomes in trade. The first is species. So what kind of species are being harvested? Some species are more resilient than others. This is acai palm. And some species lend themselves to harvest more than others. Some species can be domesticated and produced on a production line, and that has the effect of reducing prices, reducing incentives for unsustainable wild harvest. But it also can impinge on biodiversity by creating more plantations. So there are sort of complex trade-offs there. The second set of factors, I'd say, is around governance. So conservation can be delivered through national parks, so public spaces, or through private land with covenants for conservation. Both models have pros and cons, but within those 2 models, well, a key, I think, is tenure rights. So what sort of rights do communities have over the resource to harvest it and trade it? So in Bolivia, that we found an example of very weak tenure rights that the indigenous communities had for Brazil nuts. Whereas in Peru, the rights were stronger. They were not formal, but they had been negotiated by a cooperative. And so the cooperative is a very key element of this in terms of increasing the power of local communities. And related to that are the strong, not tenure rights, but usufructuary rights of vicuña communities around vicuña herds in Peru, which is a CITES listed species we looked at very closely. And by assigning rights to those communities, they had the opportunity to allow the species to recover from unsustainable hunting. or unregulated hunting. The third set of factors are around markets. And this is where ITC, I guess, is the real expertise of ITC. So one feature of the markets is that the communities have very weak bargaining position. And this is a concern in terms of development. So this is Devil's Claw, where the communities only get about 0.5% of the final value of the product. And this is due to the geographical isolation and the sort of entrenched local elites who are buying the product. With vicuña, it's about 5% of the final product, but it's a similar situation where you have these local elites who are buying the product. But this can be mitigated through strengthening local enterprises. So on the right-hand side, you have Prunus africana harvest, where a cooperative was set up in Cameroon to increase bargaining power. And on the left, many of you will know Phytotrade Africa, which is invested in sort of making more innovative enterprises around baobab processing. So this comes to the second part of my presentation, which is really about the value chain and what ITC is doing in this area. So a couple of years ago, we produced a guide for exporters on medicinal and aromatic plants financed by the EU. And last week, we used this guide in Nepal, working with traffic to support exporters on meeting market requirements, understanding regulations, and so forth. And so this takes the form also of one-to-one advisory, so helping companies really work through the issues involved. And what are these issues? Well, one of the main issues that companies face is that they can't raise funding and they can't get insurance based on their inventory. And so this that means they can't then invest in sustainability in the value chain. So we're coming up with ways to address that. Another issue, not specifically to Nepal, but is about quality. So if you're storing products for a long time, the quality deteriorates, and traders are often waiting for the market to increase in value to release the product onto the market. One way around this is certification. So if you have organic or fair wild certification, you can invest in the value chain and address these issues, and at the same time increase sort of through premium prices, increase the value of your product. And ITC can also support this through standards map funded by the Swiss and by the German governments and other donors to provide greater transparency around standards such as fair wild and organic. We also take companies to trade fairs where MAPS producers, these are from Albania, can meet buyers and really get to grips with what the market requirements are. And then finally, I think a key part of marketing and increasing value and sustainability is by the ability to tell stories about the product, whether it's on the right, it's livelihoods, so investing in local education and health. And this enables a kind of greater partnerships with buyers and value addition and sustainability. So I'll stop there. I hope I've stayed within the 6 minutes. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you very much, Alexander. Any burning questions to Alexander? No, we continue then. And our next speaker, actually, I haven't met her yet. It's Miss Cristina Garcia Serna Cornes. There she is, who is a program coordinator in the Traditional Knowledge Division of the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO. And she will address traditional medical knowledge, intellectual property, and medicinal aromatic plants. So the floor is yours. Let me equip you with what is needed. It's important that you don't block the screen here so that everybody can see outside. And here you have the big arrow.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm Cristina and I work at the Traditional Knowledge Division at WIPO. One important part of our work and projects consists on capacity building activities for indigenous peoples and local communities by supporting them to protect their products through intellectual property. I would like to start giving some examples of those plants used in traditional medicine that are facing challenges, such as being endangered species at the moment. A good example of this is the famous ginseng, which has been used for many years in traditional medicine. Another example of a plant in this situation is the golden seal, which is known for its antimicrobial properties. Another example is Centella asiatica, known for healing bones, reducing inflammation, and boosting memory and cognitive abilities. And what can we do? each of us can try to support in different ways. We at WIPO, and more specifically at the Traditional Knowledge Division, make use of intellectual property tools to help protecting, among others, of course, medicinal herbs and traditional medical knowledge. And how do we do this? We have the whole intellectual property system, which can be used to protect traditional medicinal knowledge in different ways. To summarize this slide, we can make use of patents, copyright, trademarks, geographical indications, and even trade secrets, which can help protecting different aspects and in different ways. And now I would like to provide some examples of this. Starting with the use of trademarks to protect traditional medical knowledge. For instance, traditional trademarks help indigenous communities commercialize their knowledge while maintaining control over its use. This one, for instance, is called Svalbard Botanicals, registered in 2022 in Canada. Another example is Endangered. It's an Aboriginal-owned business that produces and markets native Australian bush foods and botanicals, including medicinal teas and wellness plant products rooted in traditional indigenous land knowledge. Regarding patents, we can talk about the Giovanni patent. This case is a good example of how traditional medical knowledge and patent systems can coexist, since the traditional knowledge was acknowledged, a benefit sharing agreement was established with the Kani community in India, which are the owners of the knowledge, and a trust fund was created to distribute royalties from commercialization. Also, the turmeric patent case is a landmark example in protecting traditional knowledge. It was granted in the US. However, India challenged it, proving that turmeric's healing properties were ancient traditional knowledge, documented in old Sanskrit, Urdu, and Hindi texts. Since the invention was not new, the patent was revoked. In the early 2000s, several US patents were granted for products made from maca. Indigenous Andean communities argued that maca's medicinal and nutritional uses were traditional knowledge, not new inventions. In response, Peruvian authorities challenged these patents, and many were withdrawn or opposed. The Hudia case involves the San people of Southern Africa. In the 1990s, an appetite-suppressing compound from the plant was patented and licensed to different pharmaceutical companies without consulting the San people. After public pressure, a benefit-sharing agreement was signed to recognize the traditional knowledge. And now, I would like to introduce the training, mentoring, and matchmaking program on intellectual property and traditional medical knowledge that we work on in the Traditional Knowledge Division. This program aims at establishing and supporting an innovation ecosystem related to and based on traditional medical knowledge. Its purpose is to assist communities and support traditional medicine practitioners by collaborating with research institutions, intellectual property offices, and other partners to better understand how to protect and benefit from traditional medical knowledge. Since the start of the program, at the end of 2024, we have developed different projects in some countries for traditional healers. We started in Uganda. A very similar program was delivered in Nigeria. And also these projects include a mentoring phase that aims to support traditional healers develop and effectively protect their traditional medical knowledge with the help of mentors and pro bono lawyers. Also, in 2024, WIPO member states adopted the WIPO Treaty on Intellectual Property, Genetic Resources, and Associated Traditional Knowledge, which ties patent disclosures to indigenous holders of traditional knowledge for genetic resources, including medicinal plants. It specifically recognizes that inventions based on traditional knowledge must disclose the source of that knowledge. The WIPO Traditional Knowledge Division has prepared and compiled different resources and materials to support indigenous peoples and local communities by providing information related to the tools that are available to protect their traditional knowledge. And another example of the activities that WIPO organizes to highlight and emphasize the importance of protecting indigenous traditional knowledge, particularly traditional medicine, is the Photography Prize for Indigenous Youth. The theme in 2024 was Indigenous Peoples' Ways of Healing and Well-Being, honoring our ancestors' wisdom and knowledge. And this is the end of my presentation. I would like to thank you all very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. So we are continue our panel. For the next person. It's great to learn so much, and we have already traveled a lot around the world with those two presentations. Now we will turn to Mr. Sang-Hyuk Han, who is a technical officer at the World Health Organization in the Global Traditional Medicine Center. He will present about the Global Traditional Medicine Strategy of WHO. So we'll learn more about that. Mr. Han, the floor is yours, and I will equip you with the material needed so that we can hear you better. And here you have.
Thank you. Thank you very much once again for this invitation. I'm pleased to present on behalf of the WHO Global Traditional Medicine Center, and again, very honored to be part of this. My presentation will focus mostly on the traditional medicine strategy, which is the third strategy, but of course with some history and background of WHO's work on this area. Oh, sorry. Well, my father was born in South Korea, as some of you may have noticed, but he emigrated to Paraguay in his late 30s. And years later, he suffered from persistent stomatitis, and he tried many things, but nothing seems to work very well. And one of his Paraguayan amigos suggested him to try some jujos. Jujos was selling in the selling in the local market in the dried or fresh dried forms. So he tried those infusions for some time, for several months, I guess, and his condition improved. And this kind of knowledge has been recorded in the text. And one of those first texts in the New World, so-called in the New World, was recorded written in 1552 in Nahuatl language. And because of my personal interest in the immigration from Asia to America through Bering Strait, I had the opportunity to translate this into Korean back in 2011, I guess. Yeah, so that was fascinating. Some other forms of traditional medical knowledge was very systematically organized and kept it recording, such as the Compendium of Materia Medica, or practice of principle and practice of Eastern medicine, or Yellow Emperors of Inner Canon, which was registered as the UNESCO's Memory of World Register. And this kind of knowledge, of course, some of you already mentioned during the opening session, provides an important, insightful, and sometimes very crucial information for the discovery of the new medicines. Like you know very well of this Nobel Prize awarded to Dr. Tu Youyou for her discovery of malaria treatment, artemisinin. And of course, she got insights from the Go Hong text written about 1700 years ago. The work in WHO of traditional medicine started in 1969. It was first included in the WHO Resolution 22.5 on the production of pharmaceutical in developing country, where they recognize the widespread use of traditional medicine and the need for the scientific research. So it's quite a long time that we have been working on this area. And the first World Health, the magazine, World Health published by WHO on traditional medicine was actually on the medicinal plant. This publication traced back in 1973. Actually, this is quite important because these medicinal plants precedes the one on the traditional medicine, which was 1977, and on the acupuncture, which was in 1979. So actually it was the herbal medicine or medicinal plant was the entry point for the traditional medicine on the public health and the primary health care. And early this year, I think it was in January this year, I had a chance to talk with a professor emeritus from the University of Illinois, who has been very closely working with WHO on let's say, herbal medicine database and the WHO monographs for the last 50 years. And he kind of updated me that his work spans more than 50 years, starting in 1975, working on herbal medicine for fertility. So it was a great chance. Actually, the person on the left side was the first coordinator or program manager of traditional medicine in WHO. As Dr. Tuyoyo, who discovered the traditional the malaria treatment, she also noted there's one of the issues was the discrepancy or the variation based on the geography, seasons, and on the plant per use. So one of the first work guidelines that WHO produced was on the medicinal plant conservation guidelines for the conservation of medicinal plants, produced in 1993. Which again is followed by all other guidelines on herbal medicines, such as GMP, GACP for the safety and the quality of traditional medicine. And WHO had the first traditional medicine strategy published in 2002, which for 2002 to 2005, and then the subsequent years, the traditional medicine has been incorporating the medicine strategy. So always, again, I'm trying to emphasize the traditional medicine and the medicine or herbal medicine was kind of a part of all these collective works in WHO. And during May last year, on the 78th World Health Assembly, WHO adopted the Global Traditional Medicine Strategy 2025 to 2034, which will guide the work for the next 10 years. And those strategies start with a statement saying the WHO and the traditional medicine used by people across all WHO 6 regions. So it's definitely the people are assessing and using it in their practice for the health and well-being. By WHO data, actually, the 170 member states acknowledge their use of traditional medicine, and 67% of the respondents report the 40 to 99% of their population use traditional medicine. And in December last year, we had the second WHO Global Medicines, second global summit on traditional medicine, hosted by Indian government. And during this process, we produced several regional videos to highlight some of the key part of this. For the America, it was about the safeguarding indigenous rights, healing method, and ensuring sustainable use of traditional knowledge. For the Africans, was about preserving generational wisdom, the safeguard ancestral knowledge, and for Europe was about scientific integrity. Actually, for the recently adopted global traditional medicine strategy, defined for the first time the concept of definition of integrated medicine, which is interdisciplinary and evidence-based approach for biomedicine and traditional medicine. So, and followed by so I'm trying to highlight every country, all the regions are using traditional medicine in their respective forms. And for the Middle East, Eastern Mediterranean region, it was about capacity building, advancing research, education, and policy. And the Southeast Asia was about cultural heritage, research, innovation, and the medicine, where the medicine work hands in hands with the meditation. And in the Western Pacific, it was about collaboration. My last part of the presentation is about the strategy itself, in which one of the 9 guiding principles is actually to protect, is about the indigenous people's right. Where we state the indigenous people have the right to their traditional medicine, to conserve medicinal resources, and to protect their knowledge from misappropriation. And follow to that, under the direction 2.1, the strategy calls for the strict regulation of safeguarding regulation of endangered species aligned with the CITES and national laws. Where needed, we must phase out unsustainable practices and invest in sustainable alternatives. And responsible production, ethical sourcing, and mindful use are essential. And under the direction 4.2, the strategy calls for the inclusive inclusive approaches to protect traditional knowledge, ensuring fair and equitable sharing of benefit arising from its use. And yes, I have my colleague from WIPO who know very well about this photo, and I also was attending that as a WHO delegation. And my last slide was about the second Global Summit we had December last year, where we promote the so about the indigenous people, the strategy promotes participatory research. So this and the cross-sectoral collaboration, and with the WHO Global Traditional Medicine Center, we aim to better support member states. So we hope to take this journey together, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. That was a great overview. So anybody questions? Otherwise, we move to our next speaker, who is Mr. Koval. Alexei Koval is a research associate in the Department of Cell Physiology and Metabolism at the University of Geneva. And you will be speaking about decoding nature's medicinal signals for precision oncology. So the floor is yours, and here is
Thank you.
Thomas.
So thank you very much. As I say, it's an immense honor and pleasure for me to present you this bird's eye overview of our activities related to the medicinal plants in University of Geneva and how we decode them into the precision oncology of the future. So I will start with the reminder that nature is our biggest biolab, and actually it is performing evolution of millions of the compounds in the conditions which are unmatched in the lab, and for which it uses tools which are beyond our imagination. So it is no surprise that actually even to date, 2/3 of the drugs on the market are of natural origin, or they are directly natural products. And their structures are frequently beyond what can be imagined by the synthetic chemists. We would all be happy to be cured by some kind of tea from nature, but in many cases it's not possible, because such teas, they contain only one active ingredient, whereas they're surrounded by thousands of inactive compounds, and many of them can be actually quite harmful. And therefore, it's quite a challenge to identify only one of them, which will cure you. Traditional medicines are an excellent head start, but still they suffer from the same problem, and their active beginnings must be understood before they can be converted to the modern medicines. Thus, in the lab, we are doing very gentle, very automated and specialized processes for extraction from these medicinal plants, which end up with mixtures of thousands, if not tens of thousands of the compounds, which we need to separate and test as individual compounds. And here you can think of the marathon. You all know that marathon runners are perfectly separated when they run over the terrain by just simply interacting with this terrain. We actually do the equivalent of the molecular marathon for these compounds, except that if it would be scaled to the human size, our molecules would run several times around the globe to have a perfect separation. With the compounds so sparse and so difficult to come by in pure form, we perform very miniaturized assays in the volumes which are much smaller than the teardrops, and with just few thousand cells in them, in order to address every compound, because it might be the precision oncology of the future. I should remind that we are not just watching how the cancer cells die in the tube. We actually address their very specific mechanisms which come from the deep down knowledge of cancer functioning as the disease, in order to identify compounds which merit the designation of the modern drugs. Afterwards, with those which are showing some promise, we need to decode their structure, which, as I have already said, is frequently surpassing imagination of the modern chemists. For this, we use cutting-edge tools based on magnetic resonance and high-resolution mass spectrometry, which are combined creatively together, and we're capable of deconvoluting structures, which you might see right now on the slide. This is absolutely essential because just tiny changes, which are noted here in the green, convert toxin into the actual anti-cancer drug, etoposide, which is used in clinics and saves millions of lives against cancer. Our lab only has this interaction with other local suppliers across the globe. University has obviously many more. And in this interaction, we are guided by the Nagoya Protocol, obviously, which can be summarized as simple as fair play, but deep down it has clear defined steps. That is, we need to share intellectual property with our local collaborators. We need to include them as co-authors in our scientific papers. And we also go actually beyond this. We are very happy to have them for internships, for scientific visits, in order to exchange with them cutting-edge knowledge, access to the top-notch instruments, and promote this kind of circulation of scientific data. Just few highlights of our results. For instance, we collaborated with researchers in Uzbekistan, and you can see that we identified a very interesting compound, which just because of this tiny little group highlighted in green becomes active against deadly cancer. We are working with marine biologists, and we study ophurus living in the abyssal darkness so that they can develop photosensitive compounds, which would be impossible for terrestrial species. And then these compounds, when they are brought to light, can be used for what is called photodynamic therapy, exactly because of their high sensitivity to light. If I say tannins, actually many people would associate them with just wine, but some specific plants in Africa used for traditional medicines developed such tannins that they can be used against cancer, as we found out. The future of this is very promising because we can take these already complex scaffolds and using very special and gentle chemistry, convert them into something even more specific, even more similar to the modern medicine. We can also cross two worlds, and we can expose the fungi to the natural products to which they would never have access in their natural habitat, and produce compounds which are, again, highly interesting and very intricate. And finally, we are also purifying individual enzymes. We are purifying also enzyme systems from the living organisms in order to perform extremely precise modifications and fusions. And this is extremely scalable and is the basis of the future green synthesis, which means lesser toxic waste and lesser environmental damage. And my last message is that these signals which we decode is a reminder of something which we cannot afford to lose, these habitats, because we need to keep our pharmacy of the future clean and open. Thank you very much.
Dear guests, we have 5 more speakers from the CITES Secretariat, from the Biopark, who is closing next, from WWF International, from the Global Initiative Against Transitional Organized Crime, and from BioVision. But before we continue with the lightning talks, we are going to have a little break because there's still a little coffee and some food. And it's also an occasion for you to exchange with the experts that are here around. And I hope to see all seated back here, let's say at 3 to 11, because we will start at 11 sharp, okay? Very good, and I see that our colleague from CITES is very stressed. She's going to be the first one starting next. So a little break, you have stands around the corner. You have our colleagues from FAO who are there. You have the colleagues from BioVision who have also a stand. You have the Gen stand. You have the Biopark, which has a stand, and of course our colleagues from CITES. So please enjoy a little break and see you here in about less than 15 minutes, in 12 minutes. Thank you. Yes, that one is there, perfect. The remote control, so it's a big arrow here. But wait before you. So, distinguished guests, we are now going to start the second set of lightning talks. Please have a seat. To begin this segment, I am pleased to invite Ms. Thea Carol, Chief of the Science Unit at the CITES Secretariat, who will be speaking on CITES and the global trade in medicinal and aromatic plants. Ms. Carol, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. Thank you for the opportunity. As mentioned, I'll be talking about CITES and the global trade in medicinal and aromatic plants. CITES regulates more than 35,000 plant species listed in the appendices, and these require non-detriment findings, legal acquisition findings, etc. It includes medicinal and aromatic plant species, or we refer to in short as MAPs, so that I don't have to say it every time. And the CITES listed MAP species are increasingly important in the global trade for addressing wellness issues, health issues in the cosmetics field and food sectors. And this highlights the importance of ensuring scientific-based assessments are done, international trade is effectively regulated and monitored to ensure the trade remains sustainable. But it's not only used in consumer products across the world, it is also imported in terms of traditional knowledge systems and local livelihoods and supporting these. And therefore, the trade in MAPs provides a bridge between biodiversity conservation, human well-being and wellness, and as well as economic development. The global trade in MAP species have been growing. It grew more than 75% in the global trade value and more than 20% in terms of the volume of trade between the year 2000 and 2022. This highlights the importance of the effective regulation of the trade in these, especially CITES-listed species. So at the 19th meeting of the Conference of Parties to CITES, the parties adopted a number of decisions to instruct the Secretariat to undertake a study to analyze the trade in medicinal and aromatic plants. This included also the consideration of the utility of the medicinal plant name services managed by Kew Botanical Gardens. And this is important because this database includes the names that are used, scientific names, trade names, pharmaceutical names, and common names for species that are traded in general as MAPs. It also includes some information in terms of the part of the plant that is used for medicinal purposes and the form in which it is traded. So as part of that, we also considered the link between CITES names that are being used and this MPNS database. So with the support from the European Union that provided funding, we partnered with Traffic and Royal Botanic Gardens Kew to undertake the study and analysis of CITES-listed species, MAP species in trade. The main part, I will share a snapshot of some of the main findings that we made, if I can find my notes on this one. So out of the more than 33,000 CITES-listed plant taxa that was reviewed, 1,500 species were identified in the MPNS database as having medicinal or aromatic properties. That is quite a significant amount of species. But then a further filtering of data was done, and the study determined that only about 78 CITES-listed species really dominate the trade when you look at specific trade terms that are used that are linked to medicinal and aromatic plants. It is therefore very concentrated. In terms of the sources of specimens that are in trade, about 80% of the trade, that international trade that's reported in terms of number of specimens in trade, are actually artificially propagated, with 20% or so of with trade that are reported in volume, so liquids, gels, saps, etc., essential oils, and so forth, being from wild source specimens.
Aloepherox and Aquilaria malacensis are two of the top species that are traded both as wild sourced as well as artificially propagated. And of course, Aloepherox are used more for medicinal purposes, but also aromatic purposes. If you think about aloe bitters or aloe gels, and in agar wood that is very well known for its aromatic uses, so for trade in agar wood for perfumes and incense, etc. Focusing a bit on wild source specimens, the study found that 12 CITES listed MAP species account for roughly 98% of all wild source MAP exports. So it's very concentrated in terms of the number of species that are wild sourced, emphasizing the importance of non-detriment findings and the effective monitoring of the international trade. It is also very concentrated in terms of the geographical scope where this trade takes place. So 98% of the wild MAP exports are from 10 exporting countries, and 5 of these are located in Africa, and 90% of wild MAP imports are imported by 20 importing countries. The study also looked at online trade and looking at focusing on 15 key priority species that are traded online. And you can imagine that this is an online search. They did a search of scientific and non-scientific names, so common names, and they had 78 million hits, 7.5 million advertisements for the species that they were looking for. That is quite significant, and it illustrates the challenges that parties face in terms of online monitoring. But the name system is also causing huge complexities. So for those 15 species that were analyzed in terms of online trade, the MPNS database had 1,100 different names for the species. And so that makes it very complex in terms of doing online monitoring, but also difficult for parties because there's lots of misidentification and then maybe gaps in the regulatory system to regulate them. And fewer than 1% of the online adverts actually indicated that there is a requirement to obtain a CITES permit. So indicating that there is some gap in terms of awareness raising, as well as a potential gap in terms of compliance monitoring of this online trade that is taking place. The study also looked at plant annotations. Annotations are in general used to specify what part of the plants are subject to regulation under CITES and which are excluded in simple terms. The study looked at whether this is helping or is ensuring that this is done effectively, regulation is done effectively. Aloepherox is used as an example here. You can see that under F, the finished products packaged and ready for retail trade are, for example, excluded from international trade. That allows parties to focus their attention in terms of regulating international trade on the, for example, raw wild source specimens, and it allows the trade to be facilitated in these other products. For Aloepherox, there was specific work done, and this didn't have any conservation concerns, but in stakeholder engagements during the study, there were some concerns relating to the supply chains and some uncertainty in the supply chain and the need for further analysis about the supply chain of specimens in this trade. So moving forward, at the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties adopted a new set of decisions. This will include, for example, considering the outcomes of the study that I just highlighted some issues of, and also looking at maybe cross-referencing between the MPNS database and the CITES databases that we have, and it encouraged parties to continue to monitor and analyze the trade in these species. So some of the key takeaways from the species is that the international trade in MAPs is substantial. It is concentrated in terms of especially the wild trade, in terms of the number of species in trade, as well as the geographical scope covered by the trade. And of course, there is an increase in the digital trade of the digital platforms providing important channel for the trade to take place. And so with that, it emphasized the importance of CITES and CITES implementation for parties to ensure that they effectively implement the provisions to ensure trade is sustainable, legal and traceable, and can through that can continue to contribute to conservation, well-being and health issues, as well as economic development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carole. Any burning question to Ms. Carole? So we move to our next speaker, who is Mr. Coleman Khiodian, who is a policy manager with the wildlife team of WWF. And you will be addressing trade in medicinal and aromatic plants, an opportunity and a threat.
Yes.
So let me equip you. Sorry for this. There we are. And here you are.
Okay. Well, it's never done this format before, so it's quite daunting. And of course, one of the disadvantages of coming this late is that some of what I wanted to say has been said much more eloquently already by others. But anyway, thank you very much for inviting me. And it's great to be here among so many familiar and unfamiliar faces. I know Christina, for example, going back to her time in traffic, and I can tell you she was just a little girl then. So this one do I point it at the yes. So here we are, medicinal and plant trade, an opportunity and a threat. Well, actually picking up so that's sort of two sides of the same coin. There's something else that I'd also like to pick up in the images, which is the idea of tradition and modernity as two sides of the trade. So with our communications team, when we were talking about doing some communications around World Wildlife Day, and the classic example of willow bark being used, being the original source of aspirin and being used as a painkiller for our communications people had looked up and said 2,000 years, and I said actually it goes back a lot longer than that. This is an Assyrian engraving, which would be about 4,000 years old. Which shows already that it's in use. Similarly, traditional Chinese medicine has a lifespan of similar magnitude, as does Ayurvedic medicine. So, on the other hand, when it comes to species like cinchona in South America, and many species in Africa, it's an oral tradition, and we don't know how far it goes back, but again, it goes back a long way. And the reason I'm taking cinchona now is because I'm transitioning to the modernity part of the presentation, and also picking up Christina's point about the ubiquity of medicinal plants in our lives, because of course, although it can be synthesized now, quinine is part of many people's pre-prandial refreshment in the form of gin and tonic or vodka and tonic. And of course, Taxol, which comes from yew, as the name suggests, is widely used in chemotherapy, has been for a long time. Of course, there are more sophisticated medicines available now, as we saw. But still, interestingly enough, I know that in Kew Gardens and no doubt in many other places as well, when they trim their yew hedges, they send the trimmings for processing by a pharmaceutical company. Similarly, Prunus africana, which we've seen in several pictures already, it feeds into tadenan, which is used for prostate treatment and other related ailments. And this is an interesting case because this is a case where you really can provide sustainable livelihoods, but unfortunately, either because of need or because sometimes the harvesters haven't been properly trained. In some places, trees are being ring barked and killed, or even being cut down to harvest the bark, because the wood is also very high quality. Which brings us to the sort of threat part of the talk. And I want to talk about agar wood, which has been mentioned already. And many of you are probably familiar with the way that WWF has used the images of species like rhinos and tigers to probably overused at this stage, and we make a conscious effort not to use them so frequently now, to talk about wildlife crime. And in fact, if there's a medicinal and aromatic plant that encapsulates that and demonstrates a lot of the same issues around governance and so on and sustainability. It is agar wood. Because of its, like the other species that we were talking about, it's high in value and it's also relatively easy to smuggle. And a point that agar wood brings out is, you know, we've been talking about medicinal and aromatic plants, and in fact, of course, the whole point is that it's not a clear distinction. Many plants serve both purposes. Probably initially attracted interest because of their aromatic properties, but also serve medicinal purposes. And agar wood has a prominent place in traditional Chinese medicine and also, again, in Ayurvedic medicine. The problem is that it's also, and of course, has a long tradition of use in the Middle East. The problem, though, is that my slide won't change. Yes. It is widely smuggled and it's easy to smuggle. And I must say, speaking as WWF, I'm glad to see that the personal effects exemption will be under scrutiny in the next intersessional, because I think the volume, or sorry, not so much the volume, but the financial value of what's covered by the personal effects exemption is too high at the moment. We're not against personal effects exemptions in principle, but they should be for sort of relatively trivial quantities in financial terms that you could reasonably expect to bring back from travel. And in this case, some of the products that are exempted are actually sort of a serious commercial proposition to carry home and sell on. So, as I say, agar wood, whoops. Oh, go back. Sorry. Forward again. Agar wood, as I say, encapsulates a lot of this. Another species that's interesting from this point of view, more restricted in distribution, of course, is Google, or Indian Bdellium Commiphora whitei, which was listed at the last COP, thankfully. The listing proposal was rescued in plenary. And there, Pakistan, which is the main source country, was supporting the listing. And India, which is the main consumer country, was opposing it, which is often contrary to the way the political dynamics break up. Another plant that has already been mentioned is devil's claw. And an interesting story about this is that, you know, when I was in the European Commission, our team secretary had serious pain from whiplash. And I suggested she use this, and she told me that afterwards, when she mentioned it to her doctor, he said, "Oh yes, I forgot to tell you about that." Yes, it is a very effective anti-inflammatory that can be taken in conjunction with proprietary anti-inflammatories. And again, another example, I shall just go back to devil's claw for a minute. The great thing about devil's claw is that it's the secondary tubers that have the medicinal elements, and they can be harvested and the plant replanted. And it raises a point that Alexander, you raised in your talk about artificial propagation or using synthetics, that they can reduce the incentive for unsustainable wild harvest. But where wild harvest is sustainable, it can be a crucial source of livelihoods in what are often, as again, Alexander, you pointed out, very marginalized communities. And that is an important consideration to bear in mind as well. And another classic example, which we've also mentioned, is bitter aloe, Aloe ferox, which is one of the case studies in the CITES and Livelihoods material that's on the CITES website, and is really a success story. And it allows me to touch on another issue which is relevant to our ambassador colleague from Panama, which we're very grateful to Panama at COP19 for tabling the resolution and decisions on gender, because one of the crucial issues about gender in CITES is who is doing the harvesting. And in a lot of cases with a lot of medicinal and aromatic plants is primarily women. Another success story to mention, and again, Christina had a role in it, is Fairwild, which, and again, it was mentioned earlier, but it's a certification system that guarantees both ethical harvest and equitable harvest, as well as sustainability. And so this is the opportunity side. I flipped it and I dealt with the threat side first. This is the opportunity side, and it's, medicinal and aromatic plants, and encapsulate the two sides of the wildlife trade balance, if you like, probably better than any other category of plants or animals. Fairwild products. Whoops. Sorry. Yeah. Available as, among other things, as teas from the Pucca company. So just a few of the issues that affect us. Corruption in its various forms, including elite capture in harvest, is an issue that we have to deal with. And then also equity, of course, and to ensure equity in the harvest process. And I think if we can address these issues, we'll go a long way towards achieving sustainability. And with that, I am finished. So thank you very much.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, beg your pardon.
Thank you very much for these important insights. We move now to Ms. Simone Haytham, who is the Director of Environmental Crime and Head of the EcoSolve at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. It was already mentioned by some of the speakers. Simone will present, her presentation is entitled Small Plants, Big Pickings, How Online Influence and Criminal Networks Drive Illegal Trade in South African Succulents. So here you are equipped and the throne. There you go. Thank you.
First of all, just good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much to Jen for the invitation to present. I think a lot of people seeing this map on World Wildlife Day would think that it was perhaps a map of illegal flows of rhino horn, of a big lumbering creature. But it's actually an image of the journey taken by trafficked plants, some not much bigger than a fingernail, that have become part of a big criminal problem. And today, I'm not going to just talk about a conservation issue or a trade issue, but really something that I see as very complementary to a lot of what's been discussed today, which is the sort of harms that arise when people go around the regulatory frameworks, or regulatory frameworks are not there or not enforced. The roots on that map don't only concern South African succulents, which we have studied most recently, which is why I talk about them today, but they intersect with broader illicit plant transnational trade networks, such as those for aromatic sandalwood from East Africa, and medicinal species like Hoodia, which has been discussed today, which was traditionally used by San communities as an appetite suppressant during hunting trips, later attracted global demand, which led to significant illegal harvesting alongside legal harvesting, and threatened the continuance of wild populations. To protect aromatic and medicinal species from criminal threats, I think it's important to understand the broader dynamics of plant trafficking and the challenges that enforcement actors face. Our research on the South African plant trade provides several insights, which I think are useful. South Africa, as many may know, is home to an extraordinary plant diversity, and many of which have been talked about already today, and notable for unique succulents and geophytes, many species of which exist nowhere else in the world. These plants can survive in harsh, dry environments and grow extremely slowly, meaning that once they appear even a centimeter or two above the soil, they can already be decades old. That makes them biologically unique, rare, and resilient, and you can also see why it provides huge challenges to surges in market demand for propagation. Many of these plants are found in tiny pockets of Southern Africa with high concentrations in the Karoo and in the clay floristic region. And for many of them, if they disappear from these places, they disappear from the planet. There are no secondary populations. And it's exactly this concentration of rarity which makes them a prime target for illegal harvesting. Due to illegal trade, what were essential components of fragile ecosystems have been transformed into high-value collectibles in global markets, things to be owned, displayed, and traded internationally. And there are really a shocking statistic that between 2019 and 2024, over 1.6 million succulent plants representing 650 species were seized in South Africa. Official seizures likely represent only a fraction of actual trade. In specialist markets, rarity increases prestige and selling price. The rarer the plant, the more desirable it becomes, and the greater the incentive to remove it from the wild. Once harvesting begins, these plants seldom remain in the country, and once they reach international consumer markets, they are far from protective national laws or specialist knowledge and are rarely detected. Most illegally traded plants are taken directly from the wild, not farmed or sustainably propagated in this trade, physically extracted from their natural habitat. And two of the sort of external factors that we have really seen drive surges in this trade. One is related to COVID and what happened there across many illicit markets. Before COVID, the trade in South African succulents was largely small scale. International collectors would physically travel to South Africa themselves, remove the plants themselves, often from protected areas, and smuggle them home in their luggage. But lockdowns disrupted travel, but not demand. And international buyers began working through local intermediaries who could harvest plants on their behalf and ship them internationally. And that shift fundamentally changed how the trade operated. Over the past decade, we've also seen the trade largely move online, something that's also been discussed as really complicating the dynamics around enforcement and monitoring. And online trade collapsed the distance between indigenous landscapes and global buyers. Social media platforms and online marketplaces played a central role in connecting sellers and buyers, reducing distance, increasing speed, and lowering risk. Traffickers disguise shipments, for example, instances where bundles of endangered succulents have been labeled as mushrooms inside bags usually used for onions for export. And there is an increasing sophistication in concealment. It's important, though, to be clear about who drives the trade. Harvesters are the most visible, but are not decision makers. People who remove the plants are not the people who decide their value. Demand is set by wealthy specialist collectors and resellers who are willing to pay high prices for rarity. Removing these plants entails damage to entire ecosystem. They are pollinators, they affect soil stability, it affects future regeneration, as well as local communities, losses which are not easily reversible. And while we don't have strong evidence of formal convergence between plant trafficking and other criminal economies, we have seen protected plants in South Africa seized alongside cannabis, rhino horn, ivory, even uncut diamonds. And investigators report that the same syndicates sometimes traffic multiple commodities, switching opportunistically as risk and reward changes. In that sense, plant trafficking can function as a lower risk entry point or alternative within established criminal networks. Plant trafficking often carries lower penalties and lower detection risk than other wildlife crimes or other crimes in general. And because the harms are less visible, links to organized crime are easy to overlook. This feeds into what researchers call plant blindness. Detecting the trade also requires significant resources that have already been deployed to counter the illicit trade in South Africa include roadblocks and the use of specially trained sniffer dogs at courier depots to identify parcels containing plant material, which is a significant investment in a context where there are a lot of competing priorities in the crime agenda. However, improved detection measures have in turn prompted harvesters and transporters to move away from traditional routes and towards nocturnal operations, which is more evidence of the adaptiveness which is characteristic of organized crime dynamics. And it's important to point out that plants, particularly timber, constitute one of the largest components of global wildlife trade by volume. In parts of South Africa, succulent trafficking rose from a small share of wildlife crime to over half of all wildlife cases within just a few years. Each sack of seized material in this picture represents many decades of lost growth in very fragile environments. And lastly, just to say that this analysis has looked in depth at a particular case study. I think there's a lot that touches on other issues that have been brought up around online trade and the role of local communities and the role that sustainable trade could play for countries. We are actively monitoring online trade in multiple species and out of that work, as well as on the ground research, producing analysis into the dynamics of the plant trade. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Haysom, for shedding light on this critical and often overlooked issue. Our next speaker is Mr. Jamal Mahmoud, who is a program manager for international partnerships at BioVision. He comes from Zurich, but BioVision has an office in the building next door. They are part of a family here at the International Environment House, and we are very happy to have them here. And Mr. Mahmoud will be speaking on protecting our relatives, preserving medicinal plants through indigenous sovereignty. So with that, I'm equipping you, sorry. Thank you. And I'm giving you the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and good morning. I'll be talking about preserving medicinal plants through indigenous knowledge systems and agroecology. Many medicinal plants depend on wetlands, forests, and mosaic landscapes. Landscapes which have been destroyed by colonial exploitation, mining, industrial agriculture, and other extractive practices such as oil drilling here in Bulisa, Uganda. The destruction often comes at the expense of indigenous people, which have protected these landscapes for millennia through highly sophisticated governance systems. The person you can see here is a custodian of sacred natural sites. His role is not solely symbolic. Custodians hold knowledge, manage access, and enforce rules. This custodian is of the Ataraka people, and this is his home, Taraka, in Kenya. There, our partner organization SALT, founded and led by Ataraka people, accompany their community in restoring and managing their ecosystem based on indigenous governance systems. Together with Afris in Uganda and Earthlore in Zimbabwe, we, BioVision, work with SALT and the other organizations on this multi-country project based on and rooted in indigenous knowledge systems. At BioVision, we aim at transforming the food system in a sustainable and just way, and this at different levels. We look at this, we work on this through the framework of agroecology. Agroecology is an integrated approach which focused on the interaction between humans and the environment, while taking into consideration the social aspects that are needed for a sustainable and just food system transformation. Indigenous knowledge systems hold rich understanding of landscapes and use agroecological practices to manage those landscapes. Landscapes which our partners in those countries call sacred natural sites. They are places of worship, sites of ritual, and often biodiversity hotspots. At these sites, special ritual, medicinal, wild food plants have survived despite surrounding pressure. Why? Because customary governance have maintained them. They persisted because the relationship to them persisted, and this persistence is important. That's why we're here today. About 75% of the world's population depend on traditional medicine for primary health care. When we lose a species, we don't lose an abstract biodiversity value. We lose a specific treatment option for real people. Medicinal plants also underpin significant economic activity. They move through complex value chains from local markets to international industries. But we also need to be aware that economic integration creates pressure for ecosystem and traditional livelihoods. As we heard a couple of times, Prunus africana, widely used across Africa for prostate treatment. And when international demand boomed, the bark prices rose, and the original harvested, they received the smallest share of the value. When the trees died, we also heard about the unsustainable practices. The supply chain, they couldn't meet the demand, and in the end, the community were left with degraded forests. We need good governance systems to be in place for global market integration. But good governance also requires sovereignty. And sovereignty also means the right to say no. No to global markets, no to the use of plants as commodities. In many indigenous epistemologies, plants are relatives, and they exist in relationship. A shrub that provides medicine provides dry season fodder. When it grows big, it provides shade and protection. And when the wind rattles through its leaves, it brings the ancestors' voice. And when they fall to the ground, they build the soil to nourish us all. These are not competing uses. They're integrated functions. The challenge for conservation is to manage multiplicity rather than single objectives. Community managed systems can perform as well, or at times even better, than strictly protected areas, which is not an argument against protected areas. It is an argument for pluralism. Different governance systems suit different contexts, but indigenous and community managed systems deserve a place in the toolbox. It is also important to acknowledge history. The establishment of many protected areas involved the displacement of indigenous people, and this created lasting harm. Understanding history is not only about guilt. It is about taking responsibility. It is about understanding the present, and it's about moving forward together. Tharaka in Kenya offers such an example. Restoring sacred groves, replanting medicinal plants, strengthening governance systems is the integration of science with local institutions. Sacred natural sites achieve conservation outcomes that statutory systems struggle to achieve, particularly where state capacity is limited. It should be acknowledged that multiple governance systems can coexist and that pluralism is a strength. Agroecology in this context become more than a production method. When we talk about plants, then agroecology is the relationship to them. It integrates the human needs into the ecosystem. It is crucial for integrated conservation. The question is, how do we integrate it? As conservationists, we often ask ourselves, how can we save nature? Today, I want to repose this question a little bit. How can we remember our relationship to nature? Indigenous people lead the way. We just need to be open for different ways of knowing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mahmoud. And our last speaker before the Secretary General join us is Dr. Mélina Mignot, a medical veterinarian at Bioparc Genève, so our local partner. She will present in French, but she might bring some words of English. And the presentation is Intégrer la phytothérapie au bioparc, soins, éducation et conservation. Last year, we were also at the Biopark for one of the events celebrating World Wildlife Day. Maybe some of us were with us. The Biopark, maybe you will mention where it is located. But
I was not, but I can.
Maybe as I put you the mic, you can just tell people where it is and when it's open so that people can go and visit. Just go on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I will maybe start in English and try to switch in French or not. I think it's better in English for better understanding for everyone. I'm okay with it if it's okay. I'm okay. If I lose my word, I will try to switch back to French. So the biopark is quite close to here, actually. We are near the airport. So this is an animal park, and we have a lot of animals coming from, well, it's kind of a refugee, actually. So animals are coming from traffics and also people who cannot take care of them anymore. So they just give them to us. So you can come back anyone, when you want. So
Bus 20, stop Valavron.
So I actually graduated not quite a long time ago. It was like 4 years ago. And in my studies, I had a lot about One Health, and I actually grew up with this. So this is really the main part of my job, and I want really to have this in my practice, in my daily practice. So nowadays, what we can say is that animal parks are not only entertainment, and they are real places for education and for conservation of animals. And as a vet, we have to actually consider the whole ecosystem around the animal. So it means the animal itself, the other ones, yes, living with it in the enclosure also, but also keepers and visitors of the park that can interact with our animals. The animals we have in the biopark are not ordinary animals, so it's not like having a dog or a cat. And as a vet, it's a little bit complicated because the medicine and drugs we can use are not designed for this species. So we have to use it out of label. And based on, sorry, it will keep changing every time, based on other species we may know which are related. Using phytotherapy in the biopark, it helps us to complete all the drugs we may have and to have more individualized treatments, which are more adapt to the metabolism of each species. As I said, as I grew up with One Health in my studies, and with this also with a problematic of antibiotic resistance. And this is something we have to consider in the biopark, but also in animal parks, because animals live together in the same enclosure all the time, and with, I'm very sorry, it will change every time. And sometimes enclosure with multi-species. So as we have here, we have the camels with the goats, and we have different species of birds together. So we have to be careful which drugs we give, not to have some residues in the area. You probably heard about the new biopark we are trying to build because ours is needs to be changed a little bit. And this new biopark, we want it to be open in all the way we can. So we want people to be able to discover the animal himself in its own environment, to move freely. So he will have big aviaries where like you can just walk between animals and nature. And we want to add to this nature a medicinal plant garden. And with this garden, the thing is also to let people know that some plants are also endangered and not only animals. Usually people like our lemons, they know that they are endangered, but they don't know that this kind of status exists in plants. So we want to talk about medicinal plants. We want to talk about their natural environment. We want to talk about how we can use them, but also about this status. And how we can use them is, it will start with what are their effects on the body. And we already talked a little bit about this, but this is a white willow, and it's mainly known because it's salicylic components were used to create and develop aspirin, for example. Another example will be with foxglove, which has been used to develop drugs for cardiac pathology. Sorry. And with this example also, we want to tell people that it's not because it's natural and it's not because it's a plant that it's not toxic. And this plant, we know it very well because this is very a toxic plant. And as Paracelsus said, we know it as Dr. Usually, that everything can be a poison and nothing can be a poison. It all depends on the dose. So this is something we really want to emphasize, and something as a vet that we really have to be careful about, because doses between one species is not the same as with another species. Okay. And also, as a vet, we cannot give a full fresh plant to animals to treat them. It doesn't make sense, both ecological, because we may need to give a real big amount of plants, but also nutritionally, because we will create some disorders, and then the diet will not be balanced anymore. So as a vet, we also have to take into consideration, that plants does not always have the same composition of active ingredients. It's not because I take two leaves of the same plant that active ingredients are the same. It varies. So we need to have really controlled drugs with a very precise amount of active component inside. And the last example I would say, which is not possible to give a fresh plant, is you can try to give sticking needle to a cat, but I'm not very sure it's gonna take it. So this is my problem. So as I said, we really need to have controlled active substance drugs, and this can be with pills. It can be a lot of essential oils, for example, or like different formula. It's kind of okay for us, but as of that, we really have a limited choice. Herbal medicine, herbal veterinary medicine that are registered are very limited. We don't have a lot of them, and also, once again, it's mostly more for dogs, cats, maybe cows for some of them, but we don't have anything for our animal in the park. So we have to deal with this and the difference between species, mainly also because with all of this kind of product we may have, usually pills are made with animal protein or with animal oils, which cannot be given to herbivorous animals. For example, our camels, our goats, we cannot give them this. We also have problem with some plants and species. So as we say, the white willow, for example, we cannot give it to any cats or feline in general because it's toxic for them. So this is something we really have to be careful, especially when it's mixed plants, because we cannot really give them everything we want. And last thing, usually we try to choose the best drugs based on the species, meaning, like, for example, if we have birds, we will choose mainly liquid forms because it's easier to give them than to give them a big pill that will never fit in. At the biopark, our animals, so this actually picture come from, it's quite recent. It's from the beginning of the year. We actually got some parrots from the airport that were illegally imported. And these animals actually are not the only ones. As I said, most of our animals are from this kind of situation. And it's usually very stressful for them because they have a lot of change of environment, the life conditions change. Even if they were from a private owner and they had a very big place to be, now they're in a smaller cage, but it's just in the meantime. But it's very stressful for them, and also because we are examining all of them, so we have to manipulate them, and if I'm not used to it, it can be a bit challenging. And for this, some plants can help us. So here we have, for example, the Passiflora plant. It's a plant from the south of US.
And we use it, and we can use it actually in our park because of its property are really interesting for us. They have sedatives, anxiolytic, and antidepressive properties. So with our animals, for example, our foci here, I don't know if it's English word, sorry. We have some problems sometimes with stereotyping movement. So we are doing always the same movement at the very same place in the enclosure. And this is a sign of stress in them. And this kind of plant can help us to just calm down a little bit while we enrich the enclosure. Another plant and another function, we already talked about it. So it's devil's claw. So we already said about its status, so I will not maybe go about this. But we love here is its anti-inflammatory properties, and also it has some counterproductive, so it will help to protect the joints and analgesic properties, so to help to reduce pain. And here is Akima. So welcome, Akima. She's with us from since 2020, actually, and she grew up with an unbalanced diet. And so she had some problem with mineralization of bones. So she had some chronic joint and bones problem in the front limbs. And here, our pagophyton can actually be from quite helpful because she's in constant chronic pain and with chronic arthritis. And another plant here will be milk thistle. So this one is quite common around here. So maybe when you walk by, you can see some. This is the plant you want to use when we have liver problem. And it also has some antioxidant properties, anti-inflammatory, and it mainly helps to regenerate liver cells when we have some damages in the liver. So it's really important for this. And we can use it also, for example, in birds, because birds, especially cockatoos and parrots, when they are from private owners, they are given mixed grain feed, and actually these grains are usually really rich in fats, so they can develop problem with liver lipidosis, so fat accumulation is like the typical fat liver we can have in birds. So this plant here can help to treat this. And in general, we would like to have antioxidant plants, so because they will help with oxidative stress, with anti-inflammatory condition, and with the overall health of our animals. So once again, the milk thistle is one of them, but also green tea leaves can be used here. So at the biopark, we would like visitors to learn about our animals, to learn about their histories, their how they live in natural condition. But we also want them to interact with their whole environment. It's not only animals they come to visit, but it's also plants, and it's also everything that is around them. Sorry. And bringing phytotherapy to the biopark, this is for us a way to improve our medicinal protocol, to have something which is more individual, or more specific to each species. And it's also a way to reconnect medicine and its origin, so with environment, why we choose a plant. Is it safe to use it? And also, does it make sense from ecological point of view to use it? And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mignot. And that concluded our series of lightning talks. So now it brings us to the end of this event, the closing part. We are joined online by Miss Yvonne Higuero, the Secretary General of CITES. She's actually in New York, I think. You can see her now on the screen. And Miss Higuero will be closing this event. Secretary General, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Diana. And yes, very sorry
to not be with you. I'm here in New York. We're going to have a World Wildlife Day event here. So I wanted to make sure that I was able to join you, all excellencies, colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen who have joined the event today, the Geneva Environment Network World Wildlife Day event today here in Geneva, there in Geneva. I really wish I could be with you, and I'm at least grateful for the opportunity to share a few moments online with you, to thank you for your spirit of collaboration, innovation, and commitment that has defined this gathering. I just heard the last two speakers and really impressed with all the presentations, with the work that is being done, and how really committed and passionate you are about this work. Now, World Wildlife Day reminds us each year of the essential role that wild plants and animals play in sustaining people and the planet. It is a moment to celebrate our shared natural heritage and to reflect on our collective responsibility to ensure that the use and trade in wild species is legal, sustainable, and traceable. This responsibility is central to conservation, to community well-being, and to the health of ecosystems that support us all. This year's theme, one of my favorite ones to talk about, medicinal and aromatic plants, conserving health, heritage, and livelihoods, has highlighted the deep connections between people and the wild plants that support traditions and culture, healthcare systems, and national and local economies. With tens of thousands of species used around the world, and with demand continuing to grow, sustainable and well-regulated trade is more urgent than ever. CITES, as some of you know, contributes to this effort through science-based decision-making and by supporting countries in managing international trade sustainably. Our recent study on CITES-listed medicinal and aromatic plants has provided new insights into global trade patterns, the diversity of species involved, and the increasing role we are seeing of online markets. These findings are now informing ongoing work under the convention, including in the decisions taken at COP20 in Samarkand, Uzbekistan last year. The focus on medicinal and aromatic plants also speaks directly to our broader global commitments. Ensuring their sustainable use and conservation advances the CITES strategic vision. It contributes to the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, especially its goals and targets on sustainable use, traditional knowledge, and equitable benefit sharing, and also helps us achieve our sustainable development goals. But what has truly stood out today is the remarkable diversity of organizations and individuals who came together in Geneva. Governments, international organizations, non-governmental organizations, research institutions, and private sector partners all contributed their perspectives and expertise. This is the richness of having these meetings with the Geneva Environment Network in Geneva. This breadth of engagement reflects the inclusive and cooperative approach that is essential for wildlife conservation. Let me express my sincere appreciation to Mr. Arnold Karlhuber, Director of the Europe Office of the UN Environment Program, to His Excellency Ambassador Juan Alberto Castillero Correa, Permanent Representative of Panama, and to His Excellency Ambassador Julian Toni, Deputy Permanent Representative of Switzerland, for their presence at this special celebration. I also extend my warm thanks to all of you, all the experts who shared their time, knowledge, and dedication today. Your contributions underscore the global value of medicinal and aromatic plants and the importance of working together to ensure their sustainable future. Finally, my profound appreciation to the GEN team, led by Diana and my own team, for their efforts to make this event a success. Before we conclude, I am delighted to welcome you to continue the celebration by joining our World Wildlife Day 2026 United Nations virtual celebration taking place online today at 1:30 p.m. Central European Time. The event will be live streamed on the World Wildlife Day YouTube channel and will feature opening remarks by the CITES Standing Committee Chair, CITES parties, and the Executive Director of UNEP, statements from the floor, high-level stakeholder stories, the announcement of the Youth Art Contest winners, and the reveal of this year's film showcase selection, and much, much more. I encourage you to join this global gathering and to continue the conversations and connections that began here today. Every one of us has a role to play in the conservation of medicinal and aromatic plants so they can continue to provide essential ecosystem and economic services. Let us work together to support the communities who depend on them, ensuring that their knowledge and livelihoods are respected and sustained. Let us also ensure that these species continue to enrich our lives for their sheer existence and also in our medicines, our traditions, and our economies, not only for ourselves, but the future generations who must rely on healthy, resilient ecosystems just as we do today. Thank you so much to all, and happy World Wildlife Day 2026. Have a wonderful day. Hope to see you later.
And am I audible online? Thank you very much, Secretary General Higuero. So this concludes our Geneva celebration. As I've heard from the Secretary General and from colleagues, there is the global virtual celebration starting at 1:30 p.m. You can find information on our website. As we are concluding, I just wanted to add a few words. If you want to re-listen to some of the experts, the video of the event is online. There's still some coffee, some drinks outside and some food, so enjoy yourself a good moment. Our teams will be preparing for the global event, so we might not be as available as you would have wished, but please continue the discussions. A special thank to all our experts who join us today here. It's always great to find out all the work that is ongoing in this international Geneva, and we see that some of you have already worked together, some others might only have met today, but there are a lot of synergies on the things that you are doing and of complementarity. And so with that, also thank you all for all those who stayed with us this morning for this celebration and those who were watching the event online. So happy World Wildlife Day, and let's enjoy a good moment together now. Thank you.